Hello everyone, this is Mike Volpe. I'm the VP of Marketing at HubSpot, and welcome to our SEO 101 webinar. I want to let you all know you're actually part of a very cool event because this is the largest webinar in HubSpot history, so we're very proud. We get a very, very large crowd here. My apologies if anyone's had any trouble with the phone line or dialing in, but this is by far our largest webinar ever, so you can feel proud that you're part of HubSpot history. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and jump right into it. The purpose today is to give everyone an overview of the basics of SEO. And so we're going to start off with what our agenda is. I'm going to start with a little bit of information about what is SEO and why is it important. I'm then going to talk about just the basics of SEO, and I'm going to break that down into three different sections. One is keywords. Another one is on-page SEO. We're going to talk about off-page SEO as well. Then we're going to talk a little bit about measuring results and sort of what are the things you need to do to make sure that your SEO program is effective. And then finally, we're going to have a little bit of a discussion around DIY or DIFM, which those are acronyms that we use here at HubSpot, and they mean do it yourself versus do it for me. So in the first case, it would be using some software and tools to do SEO yourself, and the second case would be to just completely outsource it to a professional consultant. All right, so what is SEO and why is it important? In order to really understand that, I want to tell a little story about inbound marketing and how important inbound marketing is. And in order to do that, I want to talk about, so what's inbound marketing? Well, let's talk first about what's outbound marketing. So outbound marketing are techniques that are very much interruption-based or sort of distraction-based. And these are marketing techniques where really you're trying to kind of get in your customer's face a little bit and almost be slightly annoying in order to get their attention. So things like inside sales people doing telemarketing and making cold calls, that's definitely an outbound-based marketing technique. Doing things like trade shows and seminars, print advertising and definitely direct mail and email blasts and things like that are all very outbound techniques. And these techniques were very effective back in the time when consumers didn't have as much control over how they were consuming information, and people that were doing purchasing for businesses didn't have as much control over how they were researching products and consuming information as well. But that's really changed a lot, and what's really changed is the Internet. So with the arrival of the Internet and other technologies, people are able to access this type of information, so information about products or services that they may want to buy for themselves or for their business, much more easily. And they can do this because they can just go to Google or any other search engine and ask a question. They can go through the blogosphere and look at a bunch of blogs that talk about their particular area of interest. They can go onto social networks and they can ask their friends for recommendations for different types of marketing services or other professional services as well. And so we really feel like at HubSpot that there's a notion of something called inbound marketing. And these are techniques that help prospects who are already interested in what you're selling, but so to basically help those prospects find you. And so these techniques are things like doing SEO, search engine optimization, which we're going to talk about today, pay-per-click advertising, getting involved in blogging in the blogosphere, using social media and sort of doing some viral buzz kind of marketing tactics for your company, and then combining all of that with very targeted landing pages and then using marketing analytics to really understand what's going on. And all this really supports that new process where customers, and I mean that customers both in a business and a consumer sense, have so much more control. Everyone has caller ID in their phone, so you don't answer your phone if you don't recognize the number. You've got spam blockers on your email. You've got a TiVo or DVR on your TV, so you can fast forward through advertisements on television. More and more, people are able to block out all of that outbound marketing, and so these inbound marketing techniques have much higher ROI and they're a lot more effective. And really, the cornerstone to inbound marketing is search engine optimization. And so, why is this? Well, this is because, especially in the B2B scenario, and even to a pretty great extent in the B2C scenario, most buyers are starting in search engines, and in B2B especially, they tend to start in Google. So this is data from Marketing Sherpa, and they did an analysis of people doing purchasing in the IT arena, but they've done other analysis in other areas as well that are very similar. And 98% during the very early stages of their purchasing cycle went to Google and did a Google search. In fact, 83% said they always did it, and 15% said they sometimes did it. So just a huge amount of people, and you'll see the top bar on this chart is very different from all those other information sources. So really, people are using search engines to a great extent. So I'd encourage you to think about doing a search in Google for, city in your industry, or your industry in a certain city, or your industry in a city or state, and just see what shows up. And if you can't find your company, then I'd really challenge you to think about what strategies you can, use in order to get found, because most of your best buyers that are looking to buy your products are already doing this. So, why is organic search different from pay-per-click, and why is organic search, in my opinion, so much more important? There's a bunch of reasons. First off, let me just explain sort of what this is. This is an image of Google search results using something called an eye tracking heat map. And this heat map shows what they do is they have a bunch of people do Google searches, and then they track on the page where people look with their eyes and also where they click. And the areas that are dark red, they have more activity. Areas that are yellow or green sort of have a medium amount of activity. Areas that are blue have a small amount of activity. And the rest of the page that's sort of in a grayed out color, that's a very low amount of activity. So what you can see here is most of the activity is up there in sort of what they call the Google Golden Triangle. It's that top left portion of the page where most of the activity is concentrated. Now I'm going to overlay onto this where those pay-per-click ads are. And you'll notice they get noticed somewhat by people's eyes, but not that much. And the data that we've done through our own research and looking at research from a number of other places as well, is that only roughly 25% of people that click on the search results are clicking on the pay-per-click ads. So naturally you'd say, well, where's all that other 75% of clicking going on? Well, it's happening in those organic results right in the middle of the page where all of that eye tracking activity is happening. And this is because a lot of people really ignore those ads. So overall, the benefits for organic search are very, very high. So one, it's free, so you're not paying that per-click tax to Google to every time somebody clicks on your results. So certainly there's some SEO work that you need to do to get into those organic results, but you're not paying a tax to Google every time someone clicks. So that's great. The second thing is, just as we just talked about, it's more traffic to those organic results. So 75% of the click volume goes to the organic. So you really want to get into those organic results because you want to get into sort of a bigger part of the game. Finally, other data suggests that people that have a higher level of education tend to click on the organic results more often and tend to ignore the ads. So, for instance, people that have a PhD, so a very high level of education, tend to click on the paid ads only about 1 or 2% of the time. Down through people without a college education tend to click on the ads more like 30, 40, or 50% of the time. So if you're selling to a more sophisticated consumer that tends to have a higher level of education, so you're selling to someone technical or someone professional, things like that, the organic results are actually even more important for you. And then the organic results are also much longer lasting. So once you get into those organic results, they tend to last a fair amount of time, as long as you sort of do a little bit of sort of SEO upkeep, which we'll talk about as well during this presentation. But unlike the pay-per-click, where the second you stop paying that tax to Google, your listing goes away and gets replaced by typically your competitors' listings. All right, so let's talk about the click volume you can expect by position. So if you're the first pay-per-click ad, you get about 7%, and then it kind of declines from there. So you can only have one pay-per-click ad as well, so most of the search engines limit you to just one. So really, any individual single ad, at most you can get 7% of the click volume on that traffic. Very interesting. Now when you contrast that with your organic results, again, you've got a much larger audience here. And if you're in the first position, you're going to typically see about 25% of the people that are doing a search for that term clicking on your link. But what's interesting about the organic side is you can actually have multiple listings. So Google's just trying to present the best possible results. So certain search terms, if you search for them, for instance, like the phrase inbound marketing, HubSpot tends to have actually 2 or 3 listings on that first page. So you can start to sort of add these numbers up and realize that if you do a really good job on the organic side, you can actually get a much, much higher volume of traffic than you could ever get with pay-per-click. All right, so SEO, what and why? So SEO, or search engine optimization, refers to techniques that help your website rank higher in the natural or organic search results. And this basically helps more people who are looking for your product or service find you. All right, so let's jump right into those SEO basics. So what we're really asking today is, how does Google decide? This is a screenshot for a search for internet marketing software. and you'll see HubSpot is down there in the fourth organic result. And so how does Google decide that HubSpot's number 4 and not number 1 or not number 100? Well, there's a bunch of factors. And what we like to do to make things simple here at HubSpot, because we're all about taking data and doing analysis and then making it simple for our customers, is to break it down into two pieces. One is the on-page factors. And this is basically things that are happening on the page of your website, things that you have complete control over. So this is basically the content of those web pages, both things that a human can see and also some things that a human cannot see. And that's about 25% of the whole picture. Now, the other 3/4, the other 75%, is actually mostly related to off-page factors. So these are basically links, and we're going to talk a lot about links because links are super important to SEO. All right, so now we have a feel for this. Let's jump in, and there's one other topic I want to cover, which is black hat versus white hat. You'll hear these terms as you dig more into the SEO world. White hat is basically, think of it as just sort of honest, upfront, trustworthy kind of search engine optimization. And the basic principles here are producing good content, getting people to link to that good content, and then using on-page SEO factors to accurately describe your content to the search engines. Now, black hat techniques are not a good idea. And they're not a good idea because if you get caught by the search engines doing them, you're going to get banned, and you're going to see a huge drop in your traffic, and you're going to have a really, really hard time convincing them to ever let you back into their index. And this is basically buying links or using a network of sites to create reciprocal links, copying content from others, and just basically anything that seems like cheating, it probably is. So just remember to keep those things in mind, and we're big fans of only doing white hat here at HubSpot, and everything I'm going to recommend to you today is only a white hat technique, so they're all very safe techniques. All right, the foundation of SEO really starts with keywords, and keywords are so important because it's how search engines operate and how they work. So everything to do with search engines is keyword driven. So picking the right keywords is super important to a great SEO strategy. All right, and there's 3 sort of vocabulary words that I wanted to cover before we talked about keywords too much. The first is search volume. And search volume is the number of people per month or any time period that are searching on a given term. So you could imagine that, today we've got Roger Clemens, a famous baseball player, is testifying in front of the U.S. Congress. Today in Google, there's probably a lot of searches for things like Roger Clemens and baseball testimony and things like that going on in Google. There's probably a lot less searches going on in Google for something like HubSpot. And so that search volume is going to be important. And our goal is, everything else being equal, to have a higher search volume for the keywords that we're attacking. The second term that I want to talk about is relevance. And this is basically how important or how relevant that search term is to your business. So for a company like HubSpot, for instance, terms like internet marketing or internet marketing software or search engine optimization are very important terms to our business, and those are very relevant. Things like marketing are somewhat important, but they're a little bit less relevant because they're more general. And then terms like, sales or business are even less relevant. And then things like, again, Roger Clemens or Congress or U.S. election are not relevant to us at all. All right, and then the final term, I'm going to talk a little bit about difficulty or competition as well. And this is basically talking about how easy or hard it's going to be to get listed on the first page of Google for a given search term. So think about it as sort of like competition or competitiveness or a degree of difficulty. So certainly some things are pretty easy. So if you think about taking a test in school or something like that, there's certain classes that I'm sure you had that were easier than other classes. And those classes, it was a lot easier to get a high grade. And then there were other classes that were maybe a lot harder. And those classes, it was much more difficult to get a high grade. What we want to do is for each keyword is have some understanding of how easy or hard it's going to be to get a good grade, which in SEO means getting onto that first page of Google. So what we're going to talk about a little bit is how to approach that and how to think about it, but that's going to be a really important concept. So again, our goals are going to be, 1, looking for terms that have a high search volume, 2, words that are very relevant, so they have a high relevance to our business, and then 3 is actually a low level of difficulty. So we want terms that are going to be easier to get found to that first page of Google. All right, so search volume. Let's talk about that first one. What you really want to know is how many people are searching exactly that term per month. And sort of all of the data is guesstimated. And what we're going to talk about is some of the ways to get that data. So you can use, there's a tool within Google AdWords, for those of you who do pay-per-click within Google. There's a tool that shows you some sort of relative search volumes there. That's one way. There's also another free tool out of this website called SEO Book. And that's a great way as well to sort of, get some other sort of free sort of keyword information. And then finally, I would, obviously this is sponsored by HubSpot and I work at HubSpot. We have a great tool that sort of does this and gets you this data automatically at HubSpot as well. But it's not a free tool. It is something that we actually charge for. All right, so now that we've talked about some ways to get sort of that search volume, the second thing that you really want to understand is relevance. And what you want to do with relevance is really you're the person that knows your business best. So you're really going to be the one that sort of understands this more than anyone else. So I would really recommend to people that you sort of make your own estimates, but then certainly track your results and see how accurate they were. So as you start to get traffic on a given search term, measure how many people are actually converting into leads or customers from that search term. And then you'll have a sense of sort of if your estimates were right or wrong, and you can adjust them over time. And also, if you do happen to be running some pay-per-click ads, you can also use that as a proxy. So the conversion rate on your pay-per-click traffic by keyword can be a good way to do some estimates of what the conversion rate will be for SEO. Now, what I found is that the SEO conversion rate can actually be different for a number of reasons, because I think people's mindset is a little different when they click on a paid link versus an organic link. However, it's a great place to start if you do have some actual data from a PPC campaign. All right, difficulty or competition. This is one where it's actually subject to a fair amount of debate, but I have some strong opinions on this. What you really want to know here is how easy or hard it's going to be to get to the first page of Google results. So if there's 10 million search results for a given search term, in my opinion, you really don't care about any of those search results except for the top 10. And that's because no one, I want to say no one, but almost no one in the entire world goes to the second page of Google. People will typically, if they don't like the results on the first page, they're going to do another search. So all of the traffic typically goes to that first page of Google. All right, and so there's a number of ways to sort of assess the difficulty here. The first is to look at, basically the best way to do it is to understand the SEO strength of those websites that are currently ranked in the top 10. And that's really hard to really measure, because what you really want to understand is what does Google think of those sites. And Google's algorithm is private and sort of difficult to reverse engineer. So one way that you can think about it is, you can look at the page rank of those top 10 websites. It's not a bad way. It's not a bad proxy to sort of get to that. And I'll talk a little bit later about what PageRank is. The third thing that you can look at, too, is the cost of AdWords. It gives you some sense, but in my opinion, it's not a great metric because it talks only about the competition on the paid ad side. It's actually not necessarily measuring the competition on the organic search side, so it's a little different, but it is an interesting proxy, and it's actually some data that you can get, so it's not a bad way to do it. Some people will actually use the number of results. So when you do a search in Google, it'll tell you that, here are the first 10 pages out of 1 million pages that I found about this search. And some people say, oh, well, the more, if it's millions or 10 million or whatever, the higher that number of pages that they find, that will be a more competitive search term. I could not disagree with that thinking more. So I think that's just the wrong way to approach it. I don't actually think that number actually matters at all in terms of SEO. So just because you found more pages about the topic, really all you care about is getting listed in that first page. So I actually don't think that any of the other results, the other 9,999,000 results really don't matter. So it's really only the first 10. So I don't advise people to do that, but some people do that as a proxy. It's a really easy number to get, which is kind of why they use it. But I also think the number has very little bearing on sort of what we're talking about. All right, so I'm going to pause here, and I've got Ellie, who also works here at HubSpot, helping me out with a couple of things. And she's poking me and telling me that we've got a question from Andreas, and says, what is PPC? So PPC stands for pay per click. And those are the ads that you can actually purchase in the search engines that appear on sort of the top and the right And PPC also, it's also called within Google, it's called AdWords. So I'm talking about this AdWords cost in this third bullet point here. That's really the same thing as sort of PPC. And those are the pay-per-click ads. So it's related to what we're talking about today, but today's topic is really search engine optimization and organic search. All right, so let's talk about picking keywords. Again, our goal is to have a high search volume, high relevance, and low difficulty or competition. And so I gave you information earlier about how to get that data for each one. And I just have a quick snapshot here of the HubSpot Keyword Grader, which basically does all of that for you automatically. So with HubSpot, we have a tool. You just type in those keywords. But you'll see here that what we do is we display those columns to you. So we show you the relevance, and you see that these are all rated high relevance, but you can rate those 1 to 5 within the HubSpot tool. Or if you didn't want to, if you wanted to do something for free, you could just use a spreadsheet and have done all the work yourself to get all these things. The second thing is we also show monthly searches. So again, I showed you a few ways to get that data either for free or automatically through HubSpot. And we've got monthly searches here as well. And then finally, we've got this difficulty too. And so you'll see here that what's interesting about this term is, for instance, let's even just compare these, just sort of compare these bottom two. If we do internet marketing versus just the term marketing, marketing is a much higher search volume, but internet marketing has a much lower difficulty, and they've both got relatively high relevance here. And what I'll tell you is that this difficulty 65 is going to be relatively hard to go after. The 59 is a little bit easier. And so you'll notice that our rank in the search engine in Google for that term, internet marketing, is actually, when I took the snapshot, it's 25. We've actually gone up. I think we're closer to around 15 today. So we're working our way up to the first page. And this is because we were able to very easily analyze all these things. This sort of explains what's going on. So that's sort of how you think about sort of SEO and sort of how to pick keywords. All right, so let's switch now to on-page SEO. So what are some of the things that we need to talk about? And I'm going to do a quick overview of HTML. My apologies to those of you on the phone who can actually do a little bit of coding, but we get a lot of marketing folks who don't really understand this stuff, and I think it's very important that once you understand sort of the very, very basics of HTML, you really understand how search engines work. So this is what HTML text looks like. And HTML just stands for Hypertext Markup Language. And the idea here is that it takes regular text and applies tags to it in order to basically govern how that text will appear on a page. And so all of this HTML text actually comes together to look something like this on a web page. And you'll see its HTML text looks different to a person than to a search engine. And if you look at the word look, that actually is up top here. You'll see a B and then a /B and these little wickets here. So that's because that's basically telling the computer to present that as bold. Same thing with the word person. There's I and sort of a /I in these wickets. That's showing hey, display the word person in italics. And then finally, you'll notice that there's a link here at the end, and there's sort of an href thing here too. And basically, it's saying, okay, I want the word search engine here, but I really want it to be to appear as a link, and I've got a link to something. So that's basically how search engines work. So what's interesting about this is all of this text. Basically, there's a whole bunch of ways to just mark up text. And there's ways to sort of describe to a search engine to a web browser how to make that page display to people. And so when you think about that, every page that we see, so if this is a screenshot of sort of the HubSpot homepage from a couple weeks ago, that page, Google doesn't see that page the way it looks right there. It doesn't necessarily understand colors, doesn't understand backgrounds, it doesn't really understand images that well. So when Google and the other search engines look at a page, there's certain things that are more important than others. The most important thing on this page is something called the page title. And this is in that HTML text, and it governs what appears in that top bar of your browser. So this actually, we've updated our page title on our home page, but a couple weeks ago when I put this presentation together, it was internet marketing software. I think it's a little bit longer now. I think we added a couple other keywords recently. But basically that's, internet marketing software is the page title. So we've got good keywords in that page title. The second thing is in the URL. So this is an older URL, different, but what you want to look for in the URL is internet marketing software. Those keywords, again, are in the URL of the page. The third thing is the content of the page itself. and especially there's things called H1, H2, and H3 tags, and those are basically the big, bold headlines on your page. And Google and the other search engines do look at those headlines as being more important than the other text on the page. So you want to make sure, again, that you've got good keywords in there as well. So you look at all three of these things so far. I've got internet marketing software in all three of those fields. And then finally, on the page text itself, I've got the words internet marketing software in that page text, and even looking at sort of what's bold and what's highlighted within the text is also important. So you want those same keywords on each page. All right, there's also some on-page SEO that's a little bit more invisible, and what I mean by that is that you as a human, when you browse to the page, you don't see it. But there's a couple things that are sort of part of that invisible on-page SEO. The first is this description. So when you do a search in Google for internet marketing software, one of the results you get in the first page is this, so it's the HubSpot result. And you'll see that this black text in the middle here, that text is actually the description of that page. And as a marketer, what I can do is I can actually write that description myself, and then it appears to everyone who finds that page in a search engine. So what you really want to do here with the description is it's not going to help you get ranked higher, but what it is going to do is it is going to help you get more people to click on your listing. So with the description, typically you want something that's going to be enticing to people, a little bit promotional in terms of really encouraging them to click and making it seem like they're going to get the information that they're looking for. And then as part of that too, you'll notice that the words internet marketing software are bolded. And that's because that search phrase is what I searched on. So as much as you can to have the same search keywords in that description toward the front of that description is just going to reaffirm for the user that what they're searching for is actually on this page and just encourage them to click. All right, so something else is there's a meta keywords field as well. Our recommendation is that you do use it. It is an opportunity for a little bit of SEO. This field is not that important anymore. Most of the search engines don't give that much weight to it, but it is something you can do. It's relatively easy to do, so you might as well use it. And we really believe a lot of people, it used to be 5 or 10 years ago that what you wanted to do was do lots of keywords in that field. But today we really feel like the search engines discount you if you do that. So what you really want to do is have maybe no more than 5 or 7 keywords in that field. And then the final thing that you can't see as well, which is actually pretty important, is the alt text on the images. So way back when the internet sort of was first getting started and download speeds were really, really slow, people would occasionally put images on web pages, but they took forever to download. And so what happened was people developed this way of putting this alt text, so it's alternate text is sort of what it means, and it's a way of describing in words that are typed into the page of what the image actually is. And the search engines, because they can't see an image, will actually look at that text to understand what the image is about. So what you want to do is have descriptive text in all of your images. A lot of times today people forget to do that, or just, because they're lazy, they don't do it. But you really want to do that, and you want to, as much as possible, include keywords in that alt text to really describe what's going on. So for instance, this is the alt text on an image that looks like this on our home page is internet marketing software. All right, so now that we've covered that on-page SEO, let's move now to off-page SEO. All right, and again, with this off-page SEO section, there's a little bit of vocabulary to cover as well. All right. The first thing is Google PageRank. So PageRank is essentially a measure of how important Google thinks your site is. It's a 0 to 10 scale, and it's an exponential scale. And that means that roughly going from like a 3 to a 4 is 4 times harder. And then going from a 4 to a 5, that's even another 4 times harder. So it gets harder and harder to move up the scale. So it's not like a 5 is, just a little bit better than a 4. A 5 is actually a lot better than a 4. And a 6 is actually a lot better than a 5. So it gets really, really hard to move up the scale. All right, and PageRank is mostly governed by something called inbound links. And I'm going to talk about inbound links a lot, but these are basically web pages that link to your website. So I'm not talking at all about the links that you put on your website to someplace else. What I'm really talking about here, and what's really, really important, is how many people link to you. So how many people are pointing their web pages toward yours. And then finally, we're going to talk a little bit about link anchor text. And that is the text in the link to you. So in this case, that blue text, the link, is actually the anchor text of this link. So that's just something to be aware of, and we're going to talk a lot more about that in just a couple minutes because it's super important. All right. Again, remember, 75% of search engine optimization is this off-page factor. And most of the off-page factor is actually governed by links. So I want to talk about links and why they're important. The major thing about links is that they're really, really difficult to fake. So when you think about links, all that on-page SEO stuff that we're talking about earlier, it's really easy to fake that. You could put whatever you want on a certain web page on your site, and it's kind of hard to really know if the page is actually about that stuff or you're really just trying to trick the search engines. But just like in real life, so if you're out there and you're at a business networking event and you're meeting people and you're asking them for recommendations, it's pretty hard to fake those recommendations. So what the search engines have done, and this actually started, Google was the huge proponent of this, and that's sort of the major reason for Google's success, but there's a bunch of others that do it now as well, is that search engines are now looking at links and they're treating them sort of like recommendations. And there's three types of recommendations, really. Someone could tell you, hey, I know Mike Volpe. And that's good. And you're like, oh, okay, this guy Mike Volpe sounds like maybe he's good at something. But you don't really have any context around what that recommendation means. You just know that someone sort of voted in favor of Mike Volpe and mentioned my name to you. The second type of recommendation you can get is that Mike Volpe is a marketing expert. So someone that maybe you don't know that well could tell you, oh, Mike Volpe, he's a marketing expert. And that's a little bit better of a recommendation for me because someone told you, they mentioned my name, and they gave you some context around that. And they give you a sense of, okay, well, Mike Volpe, and you want to talk to him when you have a marketing issue. So that's good. And then the final type of recommendation you can get is someone super famous who knows a ton about this subject, like Seth Godin, who's like one of the best marketers in the world, could tell you, if Seth tells you Volpe is a marketing expert, that's really good. And that's really, really good for me, and that recommendation should have a huge amount of weight with you. And so links basically work the same way. So there's three different types of links, three pieces of information that a link can pass. So one is that if there's just a link, so if someone just has HubSpot.com on another website and that links back to me, that's good. But it doesn't necessarily have any context. The second type of link is that if there's anchor text there, so if the link actually says internet marketing and they link back to me, that's good because it's telling the search engines I'm voting for HubSpot and I'm voting for HubSpot within the context of internet marketing. So HubSpot is good for internet marketing. That's great. And then the final piece is how much does the search engine trust that website? So is it from your personal blog or your personal website, or is it from CNN.com? And if it's from CNN.com or Yahoo.com, that's a really, really powerful link because the search engine is going to give that link a lot more weight. So that's just like Seth Godin telling you that Volpe is a marketing expert. All right, so now we've talked about links and sort of why they're important and how to think about them. I want to give an example of how powerful links are. So there's this phenomenon called Google bombing. And I don't know if people got this email. It was a few years ago now. It's getting a little dated. But people used to send around this email and say, oh, yeah, this is really funny. Go to Google and search for miserable failure. And the reason it was funny was because the first search result that came up was actually the George Bush web page on the White House government website. And, obviously that page did not have the word miserable failure on it at all. But the reason that Google was ranking it for that search term, miserable failure, was that thousands of bloggers had gotten together and all linked to that web page with the anchor text, miserable failure. So they basically were able to manipulate search results because thousands of them were able to get together. And obviously it was on a less competitive search phrase, so there wasn't anyone trying to rank for miserable failure. And so that's sort of what happened here. So again, it just really sort of shows a testament to the power of links and how important they are. Now, if you go to Google today, what Google's actually done is manually adjusted the search results for that phrase. And so if you go to Google today and search a miserable failure, you don't find George Bush, but you do find a lot of news coverage about this incident. So that's just sort of, sort of something to think about as well. All right, so let's talk about link building tips. So how do I build more links into my website? Because if links are really important, how do I do that? How do I get ranked by building more links? So the first tip is directories. So there's some directories out there like DMOZ that are free. There's some directories like Yahoo and Business.com that are paid. There's a bunch of local directories and things like that, but there's a whole bunch of directories that are lists of different websites, and if you can get into those directories, that's good because they're going to link back to you. But again, just remember to keep in mind the quality score. So if a website just doesn't look like it gets a lot of traffic, doesn't look like it would be trustworthy in a search engine's eyes, maybe that's not a link you want as much. That's just something to think about. All right, partners. So if you have a number of companies that maybe resell your product, or companies that you have some sort of a partnership with, or things like that, your partners are a great source of links, and they should definitely link to you. And hopefully they'll even link to you with the right anchor text. All right, and then really around links, the other thing to keep in mind is that content really is king. So the better content you have, the more content you have, the more compelling and interesting your content is. Content really drives links on the internet. And so if you have more content that's good, you're going to be more likely to get more links. So what do I mean by content? Well, starting a blog is a great way to join the blogosphere and start to generate more links into your site. People are just much more likely to link to a blog than they are to link to a sort of static and boring corporate website. The second thing you can do is create a tool. People love free tools. And at HubSpot, we've created this tool called Website Grader. It's at websitegrader.com. And it's got almost 50,000 people linking to it now because it's a useful and free and valuable tool, and people like to link to things like that. The other thing you can do is create other compelling content like viral videos or cool photos. A lot of this really depends on what your market is. So if you're a jewelry company, maybe you want some really neat photos of very interesting pieces of jewelry that you've designed. If you're a business consulting, a strategic consulting professional, and you've got a small consulting business, maybe what you want to do is create some really interesting videos that address and give people good advice. So if you're a financial consultant, maybe you want to have things about things to think about for the new 2007 tax code and filing your 2007 taxes. And that's a video that you can put on your website, you can put it on YouTube and things like that, and that can help generate traffic and links as well. So really think about your company and sort of what content makes sense within the context of your company, but better content is definitely going to drive some links. All right, so press releases. So for the companies that are doing press releases can be a great source of content. People tend not to link to press releases that much, but whenever you send out a press release, typically it gets distributed to a whole bunch of other websites. So what you can do is within that press release is actually link back to your own website, which is a really good idea, and you can also do that with the anchor text that you want because that's text that you control. So sending out press releases that are optimized for SEO is really important. And that's sort of a whole topic in and of itself. I've done other webinars about that specific topic, but that's something just to be aware of and sort of something to really think about. All right, and then social media. So for those of you who are not on LinkedIn or Facebook or getting involved in Yahoo Answers or sites like that, they're a great way to drive additional links back to your site because it's content that's out there. It's other web pages that can link back to you, and there's a number of things that you can do. And that's sort of, again, a whole topic in and of itself, but getting involved in social media and just linking back to your website whenever possible is a good thing. And then we talked a little, I mentioned Yahoo Answers, but even forums and wikis and other things like that, they're all great ways to have additional links back to your site it just takes you a little bit of time to sort of get involved in those things. But that's a really, really good source of links. All right, so now we've talked about how to pick keywords. We've talked about on-page SEO. We've talked about off-page SEO. So we sort of talked about all the basics of things that you need to do to sort of get your SEO program started. Let's talk about measurement. So what do you want to think about measuring in order to measure the success or maybe lack of success of your SEO program so far? Here, there's a lot of things you can measure, but here are some of the things that I really like to measure that I think are sort of the high-level metrics that you want to think about. The first thing is I'm going to suggest this to you. It's a free tool. So yes, it's something that HubSpot built, but it's absolutely free. And this is Website Grader. So this is a great resource to get a lot of free information about your site and sort of how you're doing in terms of your overall internet marketing presence. So you can use this to get a number of pieces of information. I'll talk a little bit more about that. But Website Grader is a really, really great free tool, so I encourage everyone to use it as much as possible, link to it, tell your friends about it. But it's going to give us a lot of the information we need to really track some of our SEO progress. And again, the price is right because it's free. All right, so Internet Marketing Scorecard. This is something that if you're a paying HubSpot customer, you get a dashboard just like this that automatically updates all the time and tracks everything over history. If you're not a paying HubSpot customer, you can use Website Grader and Excel to basically create something that's sort of like this. What you really want to do is track all these metrics over time. So I really like to look at my website grade, and this is both the HubSpot site compared to Website Grader, compared to our blog, and compared to another one of our websites as well. But you could put yourself in here and your competitors. You could put yourself and some partners, whatever you want to do. And I like to show this and track my overall website grade. I like to track my Google page rank, traffic rank, which is my Alexa rank, so it's the amount of traffic I'm getting. And so what this is saying is I'm the 23rd thousandth most popular website on the internet, which out of the hundreds of millions of websites is actually relatively a good rank. You can track the rank of your blog in Technorati if you want, and then certainly one of the most important things to track is these inbound links. So we talked so much about how important inbound links are, and I told you that Website Grader is a great tool and lots of people link to it. And you'll see that here, I took this a couple weeks ago, but it was 47,000 people linking to us. We've also got over 16,000 links into the HubSpot website as well. So link building is super important. And again, remember the power of blogging. We haven't been blogging for that long. We've already got 2,500 links into our blog. So those are all really, really important things. I'm going to skip Delicious Bookmarks. It's a little bit less important for this discussion. But for those of you who knows what Delicious is, you can also track that. All right, so tracking inbound links. So we were just talking about how important that was. What you probably want to do is, for free, you can track this in Excel and sort of check Website Grader once a month or something like that. If you're a HubSpot customer, this happens automatically, and you don't need to do anything. You can just click on the button, and it'll give you a chart like this. What you really want to do is track your inbound links over time and make sure they're going up. So again, this yellow one shows you sort of the success of Website Grader, sort of a tool that people link to, and it's really grown from, back in November, 30,000 links to end of January, closer to 50,000. All right, so the second thing, aside from those high-level metrics that I really like to track, is what's your keyword rank, and what is that rank versus competition? So, for instance, this is the keyword rank on the search term Boston engagement rings for a number of local jewelers here, and I've even got a couple, Diamonds.com and Blue Nile, they're actually national jewelers. And so for those of you who know me personally, I got married this summer, so I was, I live in Boston. I was buying an engagement ring, and I, started tracking this stuff over time and saw who was ranked. And what you'll see here, which is interesting, is none of these companies are actually ranked in the first page or anywhere in Google for the search term Boston engagement rings. Now, you'd think that if you're a jewelry company and you're in Boston, you'd probably want to get ranked for that, because somebody like me is going to go to Google and type in Boston engagement rings and start to figure out where they want to buy their ring. And it's a pretty sizable purchase. So what you'll see here is that the only one that's actually ranked is Long's Jewelers. And they started off way back in August when I started tracking this, right around the time that I got married. They weren't really ranked very highly, and they were really hard to find. But they've since sort of grown and climbed up. And you'll see that Blue Nile has sort of been around sort of the bottom of the results and sort of spiked up a little bit, but hasn't been that successful. So if I were doing the SEO program at Long's Jewelers, I'd feel good about what I'm doing. If I were any of these other Boston jewelers, I wouldn't feel that good about it. So what you can do is you can track this either, again, if you're a HubSpot customer, this happens automatically, or you can also just go to Google, once a week, once a month, check your rank, put it in an Excel file, and then you can build a chart like this over time as well. But you need to, again, check your rank for this individual search term. And what you really want to do is have lots of search terms that you're tracking as well. So it gets, a little bit difficult to manage if you're trying to just do it in Excel, but you can certainly do it. All right. So the other thing you want to track is the overall amount of traffic and leads from search engine optimization. So what I like to do is look at just my overall organic search traffic from Google. And this is the search traffic to HubSpot for sort of the last half of 2007, month by month. How much search traffic did I get into my website for people that were searching in Google and clicking on the organic results? And what I love to see about this chart is that it's going up over time. So back in May, I started at HubSpot back in March when the company was sort of just getting going and coming out of beta. And we had a few hundred searches a month, which is great. And certainly we've been working hard in our SEO program. We've been able to triple that, from around 550 searches to almost 1,500 in December. And that's pretty good. So we're getting a lot more people finding us through the search engine. So there's a number of ways that you can track this yourself. If you've got any sort of a web analytics package, you can typically do something like this. Again, if you're a HubSpot customer, you can just click about 3 buttons, and then this chart gets produced automatically for you. But if you're not doing, if you're not interested in doing something like that, there's free tools out there like Google Analytics that will give you a chart somewhat like this one. So you can do some sort of things like that as well. All right, the other thing I like to track is traffic and leads from SEO. So that last graph was the overall volume of search traffic I'm getting from Google. But I also like to look at sort of this second line on this top chart here, which is talking about sort of my overall Google search traffic. And it's giving me the number of visitors, which is great, but it's also giving me the number of leads and the conversion rate. So this is something that, again, if you're a HubSpot customer and have the lead analytics set up, it happens automatically. But this is showing you, it's a little harder to do without some more sophisticated web analytics yourself. But what you can do is sort of set this up so it's tracking the number of people that are converting on your site. And so what I really want to know is not only how many people are finding my site, but also how many of them are converting into leads. Because to be honest, especially in the B2B world, I don't really care if somebody finds my site if they don't convert into a lead. What I really want to do is drive leads and drive sales. And to me, the best way to do that is get conversions on my site. So that's sort of one of the things that I track. The other thing that I track is by keyword. I really like to look at which keywords are converting at a high rate. So remember, internet marketing software is a search term that we're on the first page of Google for. And over this time period where we're in this report, we got almost 200 visitors, and we got 5 leads, which is almost a 3% conversion rate, which is pretty good. So this is, again, something that I like to track. Now, if you compare that to the search term internet marketing, again, we're getting decent search traffic, but not tons of that, because we're still, not very high in the search results yet. But I only got 3 leads, so it actually didn't convert quite as well. And why is that? Well, I actually think internet marketing software is a little bit more targeted to what HubSpot does than just internet marketing in general. Internet marketing is a little bit more general term, so it's a little harder to really sort of understand that conversion rate. So it's a little harder because people don't really understand exactly what they're going for as much. Great. So that's sort of another thing that you can track to really measure your SEO program. All right, I'm actually going to pause here before I go into the do-it-yourself or do-it-for-me section. I've got Ellie furiously pointing me toward all these different questions that we've been getting, and I'm going to sort of, try to scan as much as I can to really understand that, to see if I can answer some of these questions. All right, let's see. Let's talk about. People have a lot of questions about tracking links and delicious provide, things like that. All right, so let's just talk about, Christine is asking, how do you track links in and out? So that's a good question. There's a number of tools to do some link tracking, but what I'll say to Christine is that the most important thing you should be looking at is actually less how many links are coming out of your website, and really what's most important is how many links are going into your website. And so, Christine, what you can do is you can go and run your website through Website Grader, and then you can get, and part of that report will tell you the number of inbound links, and that link number will be the number of websites or web pages that link into your website. So basically, you can get that number for free just from Website Grader. Great. I've also got a question from Paul, and Paul is asking, do hits alone improve your page rank? And I'm actually going to say no, essentially no. PageRank is really driven by the number of links into your site, and certainly there's a high correlation there with the amount of traffic you're getting. However, really what drives PageRank is links and sort of Google's trust for your website, and it's actually not very much correlated toward traffic. So hits alone actually don't really improve your PageRank much at all. All right. And, okay, great, good question here. We have a question from Javier. Javier is asking about, what about Flash pages? Good question. I get that a lot when I talk about SEO. Flash is really bad for SEO. Flash is just really, really hard for the search engines to read and understand what it is. It also tends, in most cases, to look like just one page. So even if you have lots of different pieces of Flash content that people are accessing from within that Flash file, it's really a lot more, it's really hard for the search engines to understand that that stuff is sort of like different pages. So Flash is actually just, for SEO, really, really bad. Think about Flash as an object that's totally empty and the search engine can't understand what it is. So Flash is okay if it's going to give something to the end user, and I like to use Flash as like one piece of a web page, so something that's maybe embedded in the middle of a page that shows a little bit of an animation or gives the user a way to interact with something. But you wouldn't, in my opinion, you'd never want to have an entire website that's driven by Flash or pages that are totally driven by Flash. So Flash is just generally something for an SEO purposes you really, really just want to avoid. All right, and then maybe one other question, then I'll dive back into this section as well. Someone else named Mike is asking, how do you write the description? So there's a description tag, which is part of the metadata, typically toward the top of the HTML text of each page. And you can just put whatever you want in there. And a great way to figure out what is currently in your description is to take the web page that you're interested in, put that web page into, again, Website Grader, that free tool. And so go to websitegrader.com, put in the URL that you're interested in, and if you run that in the on-page SEO section of that report, it's going to show you what the description is of that page. And then you can get a sense of sort of what's currently there for the description, and that'll probably also help you sort of change it as well. All right, so I'm going to take one more because it's actually very much related to that. So I've got a question from Greg as well. And Greg is asking, how can you tell what the alt text is on an image? So again, Greg, Website Grader, it's a free tool. If you go and put in the web page that has the images that you're curious about, and you put them into Website Grader, and you run the report, one of the sections of the report is going to talk about alt text on images. And what that's going to tell you is what the alt text currently is on those images, and that's going to give you a real sense of sort of what you can do in terms of changing the alt text. So again, Website Grader will just basically tell you that for free. Website Grader sort of gives you a sense of what the search engines are seeing on each page. All right. So let's talk about do it yourself or do it for me. I think there's a lot of great reasons to actually do either one. So I'm going to talk a little bit first about doing SEO yourself. The first thing I'm going to say is it's not rocket science. I've been on the phone with you guys for about 55 minutes right now, and I've honestly explained the vast majority of all of the basics of SEO. And you're all going to get a link to this webinar as a recording, so you can certainly watch it again and pick up a few things that you might have missed. And you're going to get a copy of the slides as well. And to be honest, this stuff is not really that hard. What you really want is some good tools to help you manage it and make it easy. But really, it's not rocket science. So I'd really encourage a lot of people to think about doing it themselves. The other thing I'll say is in terms of doing SEO yourself, content is king. So you're going to need to make sure that you set aside some time to create some content for your site. Because new content, fresh content, and more content are all things that the search engines like. You should just read a lot of blogs, both about your industry, because that's going to give you things to talk about on your own blog potentially, and also about SEO. And there's a lot of great free information out there about search engine optimization. And toward the end of this presentation, I've got some links to some good blogs that I like to read in terms of keeping up on SEO. All right, and get some good tools. So there's certainly a lot of things that you can do for free. In my opinion, you kind of get what you pay for. So some of those free tools are definitely, they provide a lot of value because they are free. At HubSpot, we created Website Grader, which I think is a super valuable and also free tool. But to be honest, if you think about the value of SEO for your company, you can probably justify an investment in some tools and sort of buying some tools. So I'd really think about sort of getting some good tools and doing a little bit of an evaluation out there. And I hate to plug HubSpot, but I'll say that in my experience, I've never found a complete set of tools that's like HubSpot that gives you as much value for the money. So I'd say that if you're thinking about doing SEO yourself, HubSpot is an awesome way to sort of augment what you have and make your life a lot easier. All right, start small and work your way up. So don't start attacking like just a term like marketing. That's going to be really broad, really difficult to get ranked for. It's going to be a high level of difficulty. Most people that are on this webinar, I think, are from smaller businesses. It's going to be really hard to get ranked for a term like that. Pick something like internet marketing software, which is what we did. We're a startup, we're a small company. So pick something like internet marketing software, a little bit longer term, that's going to be a little bit easier to get ranked for. And then as you continue to build more links into your site, get more and more content, then maybe take on something a little bit more difficult, like internet marketing. And then after that, maybe after a little bit more time, you've got some more links, and you've built up more authority for your site, then maybe it'll be a good time to sort of go after something like marketing. So again, what you really want to do is sort of start small, work your way up. Find some smaller successes, even if it's only a small amount of traffic, just to sort of teach yourself some things and sort of get things going. And sort of, so work your way up over time. And then also make sure you track what you're doing so you learn what works, because you can do a little bit of sort of learning by doing in terms of SEO. That's really going to help you as well. And by the way, this link down at the bottom here, you'll all get a copy of these slides. That's a really, really great article about what are the different factors that make lead to search engines ranking your website for certain things, which again, I gave you an overview of that earlier in the presentation, but that's a great resource as well, and you'll get all these slides so you have all the links later. All right, now let's switch over sides. Let's say you don't want to do it yourself and you want to hire an SEO consultant. How do you think about doing that, and do you want to do it or not? What I'll tell you about an SEO consultant is anyone you hire should be able to explain to you in very simple language what determines how web pages rank. And if they can't tell you that and can't explain it to you in simple language, then I wouldn't hire them, because they're actually trying to make it more complicated than it actually is. I think that the content that I've delivered today in this webinar in a relatively simple way explains the basics of why pages rank and why some pages don't rank. And they really should be able to explain that to you. And if they're trying to make it more complicated, then they're probably, frankly, doing the wrong things. SEO is not rocket science. There's really some fundamental principles that if you follow, you do reasonably well. And so any SEO consultant really needs to understand that. And their goal should not be to confuse you. Their goal should be to educate you. All right, they should also explain everything they're doing to you. They really should. A lot of them don't like to do this because they want to sort of keep SEO cloaked as this sort of black art and something that's impossible for normal people to understand. It's not. It's really not rocket science. And any good SEO consultant should be willing to explain what they're doing to you so you know what's going on in terms of your company's web presence. They should also require you or someone to create good content. Anyone that guarantees you rankings and just tells you that they're going to get you ranked for a bunch of things without requiring you to create or maintain some good content, they're probably scamming you, because really content is very, very important in terms of search engine optimization. So requiring good content is just super important. And if they're not going to require you to create some content like a blog or have better content on your site or create some new stuff, then really I would question myself if I really want to hire them or not. They also should be white hat. So you should ask them a few questions about what their typical techniques are. You should ask them to talk about white and black hat and how far they usually push the envelope and things like that. But I would only go with someone, and most SEO consultants are pretty good on this, but just be careful. You don't want anything to sort of penalize you for later. You should also make sure that their own website is optimized. So there's a lot of SEO consultants out there that sell their services typically by cold calling. And you'll get a phone call one day and somebody will ask you, oh yeah, great, we can help optimize your site and this is all the stuff we do. Well, I would ask them what their URL is. I would take their URL, I would put their URL into Website Grader, and I would run the report. And if they don't get at least like an 80 or an 85, at least that, then you know what? They really don't know what they're doing. Or they just haven't decided it's important enough for them to optimize their own site. And that's just sort of, surprising to me. And anyone that sort of can't keep their own house in order, I just wouldn't, bother to sort of engage with them, because I just don't know why they would do a better job for me than they would for their own company. So again, just run their own website through Website Grader. And it's also sort of I'd say a red flag if someone is cold calling you in order to sell SEO services. If they're really that good, frankly, they're going to be really busy, and they're going to be selling a lot of the services just through their own SEO efforts and recommendations as well. They should also be able to provide references to you. So they should be able to give you names of 4 or 5 other companies that they work with, and you should run those websites through Website Grader as well. And those websites should also be optimized. And you can tell that pretty easily through Website Grader by the overall score and some of the other factors as well. Also, any good SEO consultant is going to measure the results in either leads or sales, as the case may be. So anyone that's only sending you reports about just rankings, I wouldn't hire them, because that's not really what you want. You don't care about rankings. What you really care about is leads and sales. And even anyone that's sending you reports just about overall traffic, unless they're helping you track conversions into leads and sales, I also wouldn't hire them, because I really don't care about any of that stuff. What I really care about is what's going to get me more leads and more sales. And certainly getting higher rankings and getting more traffic is typically correlated with leads and sales, but what I really want to measure at the end of the day is leads and sales. All right, and then finally, I talked a little about cold calling. No good SEO consultant should have to cold call. They shouldn't. And if they do cold call you, then I'd really sort of ask myself, why am I going to hire this person if they're getting business through cold calling, but they're preaching to me about how important SEO is? And then finally, I'll say that any good SEO consultant that's really worth their salt, the vast majority of them are going to be more than $2,000 a month. And anyone that's only a couple $100 a month or some $99 a month plan or something like that, in my opinion, I have never seen anyone that provides a good amount of value for the money unless it's at least $2,000 a month. And this is because SEO is actually like real work. There's not some magic button that you can press that's going to automatically, submit your website to search engines and sort of instantly change things for you. The search engines are relatively smart. And you need to create good content and identify that content to them in the right ways and get links and things like that. And that stuff's hard. And hard work just takes money. So I'd just be prepared to spend at least a few $1,000s a month on a good SEO consultant. Because anything way cheaper than that is just not worth it. All right, so a couple more things about hiring an SEO consultant. Make sure you're clear about the goals. And again, the goals need to be traffic and leads, and especially sales. So unless you're following it all the way through to the end conversion, it's not the metrics aren't going to be as valuable. It will also take 1 to 6 months, and this actually both applies if you're doing it yourself or if you're hiring a consultant. It's going to take a little while, especially for a smaller site or for a new website. It can take a while to build up content. It can take a while to build up links. It can take a while to sort of build up that respect from the search engine. So don't expect to hire an SEO consultant for a month and see a lot of changes. It's going to be an ongoing engagement that, can take some time and obviously money as well. Another thing to think about for an SEO consultant is content is king. So who's going to write that content? Are they going to expect you to write that content? Well, you're really willing to spend $2,000, $3,000, $4,000, $5,000 a month on an SEO consultant, and then on top of that, you also need to create a lot of content. You just need to think about that. Are they going to write the content for you? Things like that. But the content is going to be an important part of any SEO strategy. The other thing to ask, too, is a lot of SEO consultants don't like to do the really hard work, and the really hard work for SEO is link building. And so I would really think about, who's going to do that link building work, and I would ask them, well, for $2,000 a month, how many links are you going to build? How are you going to build those links? What's your link building strategy? And if they're going to tell you that they're not going to do much link building, I would think twice about hiring them as well. I think good SEO consultants should do link building because that's what drives the most traffic. All right, and then we've got a great article here written by one of our co-founders, Dharmesh Shah. The article's titled 7 Signs You Should Run Screaming from an SEO Consultant. And again, you'll all get these slides within 24 hours after the presentation, so you can read that article. And that'll give you some great information about sort of who to hire and how to think about hiring an SEO consultant. All right, so we're getting toward the end here. I promised some additional SEO resources. The HubSpot blog is fabulous, and I don't just say that because I write a lot of the articles. I actually really do think it's pretty good. And some great content there, and it's free, so check it out. Definitely subscribe by RSS or email. We update it a few times a week, and there's some really good stuff there. A couple other great search engine blogs are SEO Moz, SEO Book, Search Engine Land, and Search Engine Guide. So the names all sound about the same, and you can kind of get confused about which one you're on, but they're all pretty good content, and they all have some decent stuff there. So if you want to learn more about SEO, those are some great other resources as well. And then in general, in terms of inbound marketing and some other great marketing out there online, definitely the HubSpot blog is about a lot more than just SEO. It's about marketing and internet marketing. So check that out. WebInc Now is the blog of a guy named David Meerman Scott, who's just a really, really sharp kind of thought leader around internet marketing and viral marketing. He's got some great stuff. PR Squared is sort of a next generation PR and sort of how to use PR on the internet kind of blog by a guy named Todd Deffern that's pretty good. There's the New Rules of Marketing and PR book, which you see pictured here, which is great. And then there's even a free ebook version of that. So it's kind of one or two of the chapters from that book available at that second URL, that number 5 there, which is great too. And then again, I just really want to remind any of the HubSpot customers that are on the line that we have that success.hubspot.com site, which is only open to customers. It's password protected, but that's our best content is there. So webinars that go a lot deeper in terms of SEO than this webinar did, with lots of detailed articles. You get dozens of webinars, lots of archive videos, lots of blog articles, and then obviously our entire methodology as well. So that's a really, really valuable thing too. All right, so I've gotten to the end here. I want to thank everyone for attending. I will be taking some questions right now, so for folks that want to hear a little bit of the question and answer, I've got a couple pages of questions here because we've got many hundreds of people on the line that Ellie's just been writing down the questions for me furiously. So I'm going to get through as many of them as I can. But for those of you who want to drop off, thanks for joining. And I'm going to take 1 second to catch my breath here, and I'm going to hopefully start to answer some questions. All right, so let's see here. All right, so I've got from Eric. Eric is asking me, are dashes required to separate keywords in the URL? The answer is no. Dashes are better to provide some visual separation to the person, and depending on sort of what school of SEO you went to, some people say it's good for search engines. So some sort of separation in the URL is good. I'm a big believer in dashes, but it's not necessarily required. So if your website doesn't necessarily support that, this is not horrible. All right. David is asking a good question. Does Google discount inbound links that have affiliate tracking code on them? So a couple things here. It depends how that affiliate tracking code is working. So if it is a query string on the end of URL, that's probably not being discounted too much, so it probably is helping you. But if you're using a third-party affiliate tracking site like Commission Junction or BeFree, or I even forget who's doing affiliate stuff these days, but those types of companies, typically those are actually not necessarily links directly to your website, but they're actually redirects. So the link to Google looks like it's a link to Commission Junction, and the way the link works is it actually sends the person to Commission Junction for like a quarter of a second, puts a cookie on their computer, and does its affiliate tracking thing, and then sends them to your website. So in those cases, the affiliate links actually provide zero SEO value to your website. They actually do provide some SEO value to the interim affiliate company. So it does provide some SEO value to like Commission Junction, for instance. So that's one where it actually, depending on how you have your affiliate code set up, it might not help you very much. Great. What else do we have here? A bunch of questions that are a little bit more technical. Great. Okay. Ooh, here's a question from Kelly. Kelly says, you talked about Flash being bad. Yes, Kelly, Flash is definitely bad in most cases. All right, but Kelly's asking, are some programming languages better or worse for SEO? For example, PHP. The answer to that is basically no. All languages are roughly created equal in terms of SEO. So if you're doing, PHP, if you're doing ASP, whatever your sort of, your flavor is, or even if you're just doing very static HTML, all of it's, relatively roughly created equal in terms of SEO value. You sound like you're a little bit more technical person, so what I will say is that separating the content from the structure of the page, so doing, basically CSS-driven sites, is a good thing in terms of SEO. It just makes the content a little cleaner, a little bit easier for the search engines to pick up, as opposed to sort of, old school kind of, more basic HTML. But essentially, no. So if you're worried about using, doing some .NET ASP stuff versus PHP, it doesn't really matter. All right. Okay, good one from Barb. Barb is asking about, what about PDF or doc files on your site? So instead of HTML files or links to downloadable content. It's a very, very good question. I'm going to take a sip of water so I can actually answer it. All right. What I will say is that, yes, Google and other search engines are doing a better job of indexing content from files like PDF files or Word documents, but it's not as good of a job as HTML. So certainly there are lots of cases from the user experience where you would actually want to have files that are downloadable, that the user can either print out or forward to somebody as an attachment or something like that, and that's great, and that's definitely something you should do in terms of internet marketing. I would not rely on those files being properly or well indexed by the search engines. So what I would do is, if that's content that I actually do want to get indexed and do want to use for SEO, I would create web pages that have that same content. So what we actually did here at HubSpot, as an example, is we have a bunch of pages on our site, about 12 or 15 pages, that are all basically the text of a white paper that we produced. And so each page is its own HTML page. Each page is optimized, and we took all the content from the white paper, put it into regular, web pages. And then what we've done is also had a link to a PDF download. So we're sort of doing both, and that's perfectly fine. It's definitely something that I would encourage you to do, but I wouldn't rely on a whole bunch of PDF files on my site to get really well indexed. It's just a little harder for the search engines to really understand what those are all about. So certainly I would use them, but I wouldn't rely on them for SEO. Great. Question from JP. JP is asking, how relevant are internal links? So asking specifically about links between pages on your own site. They're actually pretty important, and I didn't get into that because it's a little bit more advanced kind of SEO technique, but essentially how many links you have on different pages of your site, how close to the home page different pages are, is definitely going to govern the overall power of those pages, and also what the anchor text is of the links on your own site to other pages is going to tell the search engines what those pages are about as well. So what I'll say is most of the principles that I talked about in terms of links and link building also apply to your own site. So that's sort of the way to think about that, but those are somewhat important. It's not going to help those pages. It's not going to necessarily help your home page at all, but it's going to help the other pages in your site rank higher for certain terms. Okay, a more technical question from someone named Dusko. How is page cloaking dangerous? Essentially, a lot of ways. I actually don't want to get into too detailed of a discussion about cloaking, but as soon as you hear the word cloaking, typically that's a black hat technique in almost every case, and it's probably just a bad idea. Is what I'll say is the short answer. So anyone else on the line, if someone mentions cloaking to you, it's probably a bad idea. All right. Great. Eric is asking. Oh, this is a great question. I get this one all the time. Eric is asking, if you relaunch a site, do you need to submit something to search engines? If so, how? Eric, anyone who is telling you that they offer a search engine submission service is scamming you. Okay, and let me just repeat that for everyone who's on the line. Search engine submission services are a scam. They really are. And the search engine submission services will tell you that they're not a scam. I will tell you that they are. And I will tell you that all day long. Any website that has any number of links into that website is probably getting crawled by Google on a somewhat regular basis, because Google is really, really powerful and has tens of thousands of servers in the world, and they're constantly crawling all of the web. So unless it's a brand new site that has never existed before, and even in that case, really the best way to get Google to crawl it is to get a link into the website, I really wouldn't worry about any new submissions or things like that. So what you can do, Eric, and anyone else who's curious about this, is you can take your own website, you can put it into Website Grader, and one of the many statistics the Website Grader gives you back is the last Google crawl date. And it will tell you how recently Google has crawled your website. And that's a really useful thing to know, because it tells you how frequently Google is going to your site. And if that has happened at all recently, which I guarantee that it has, then I really wouldn't worry about it. So the search engines are going to find your site. The one thing to think about in terms of launching a new website, though, is you need to think about the old pages, and a lot of those pages were probably ranking for some search terms. And so, for instance, you may have, HubSpot.com/internetmarketing/software.html or something like that is one old web page on my old website. If that was ranking for like internet marketing software, and then I changed my web page structure, the new page, wherever it lives, if it's on a different URL, Google's going to get confused. And so when you launch a new site, there's a huge risk of having a lot of your old traffic and rankings go away. And it could take you a long time to build that back up. So what you really want to do before you launch a new site, is do a detailed SEO analysis of your old site, understand which pages are ranking for what terms, what search terms are driving most of your SEO traffic, and then make sure that either those same pages are also on your new site, or do a 301 redirect from every individual page that was getting some traffic beforehand to the right new page on the new site. And I'm not going to go into how exactly to do that. It's a much more technical topic. But just be aware of that as an issue, and sort of whoever is doing your redesign and putting up your new site, they should know about this stuff, and if they don't, you should find someone who knows about that stuff because it can be really important depending on the size and sort of volume of traffic for your website. All right, let's see, what else do we have here? We've got pages and pages of stuff. All right, somebody named David asked a question about B2B and B2C, sort of what is B2B and B2C? And I apologize if I'm using some acronyms and things like that. B2B stands for business to business, and it's basically the scenario where you're a business that sells to other businesses. And B2C is a business that sells to consumers, so businesses that sell not to other businesses, but to like individual people. And sort of that's, there's a few differences there that I talked about during the webinar, but hopefully that puts that in perspective. All right, somebody, D Sharper, is asking, you mentioned you can only have one paid search listing. Can you create a different site, like a microsite, and buy paid search so you get more than one listing? You can do that. However, you will need to do it under a different URL and a different AdWords account. And then if Google finds out, they'll kick you out anyways. So you can do it. You can do exactly what you said, but you need to not only create a different landing page site, like a different microsite, but you're also going to also need to do a different AdWords account. And if you did both of those things, yes, you could actually do it. But what you really want to know, it's just really not a good practice because if Google finds out, they're going to kick you out and they're going to get mad at you, and Google's not somebody that you want to get mad at you, basically. All right, so a question from someone that's, I guess, unknown name, asking about keyword density. Does that muddy up the waters in your site? So I'm not really sure what the second part of the question is, but the first part is, what about keyword density? So keyword density is basically a measure of like, out of every 100 keywords, every 100 words on a page, how many of them are the keywords that you want to get ranked for? I am not a big believer in keyword density at all. I really believe that you should write a web page that is about the topic that you're trying to optimize for, and it should sound good to a person when a person reads that web page. And if you do a good job of actually creating a page that has something to do with that topic, you will naturally use the right keywords on approximately the right frequency throughout that page. So people that really preach keyword density, I just really don't believe it. I think you should make something that sounds good to people, and I think the search engines are getting better at sort of figuring out what that is. So I don't really subscribe to keyword density, but there's a little my pitch on sort of what it is, and in my opinion, I would just create pages that have something to do with the topic right naturally, and you want to make that content usable to a human, because the people that go to your web pages, they're the ones that are going to become leads, not the search engines. Great. A lot of questions about blogging I'm getting. People very, very curious about blogging. Maybe our next webinar will be all about blogging. So it sounds like, all right, so a lot of questions about blogging. All right, I'm going to just talk about blogging for a few minutes. We got a question from Kristen, and then a whole note from a bunch of other folks too. Sonny, Stephanie, all kinds of people asking about blogging. All right, so one question here. Is one blogging software better than another in terms of SEO? Not to give you the biased answer, but in my opinion, yes. And HubSpot is the best blogging software for SEO because it includes not only a blog, but it actually includes SEO. So it's got tools to help you pick the right keywords, help you put those into the right blog articles, and help you track how you're doing over time. So if you're looking to do a blog for SEO purposes, I can't think of a better overall solution than HubSpot. That being said, if you're talking about just blog software, there's a number of factors you want to look at. You want to make sure that the URL of each blog article includes all the keywords from the title in the full URL. You want to make sure that the URL, that the title of the article appears as a heading tag on the page. There's a whole bunch of just little things like that you want to really worry about. And so let me take some of these more general questions about blogging too. Questions about how to set it up, how to find blogs in your industry. Let's see, things like that. So I'll give the short answer here, but what it's really going to be is that there's a lot of ways to set up a blog, and there's actually some ways that are very cheap, and there's some ways that are a little bit more expensive. Typically, you get what you pay for. And what I'll say about blogging is, maybe I'll limit this to two things. The first thing I'll say is, for a business blog, do not ever use a free URL from a company like Blogger or TypePad or anything like that. And by the free URLs, I actually don't mean their blogging software. I'm not going to knock on anyone else's blogging software. But what I will say is from a URL perspective, you want the URL of your blog and every single blog article that you write, so every single page on that blog, to be a URL that you own and you control. And so if the URL of your blog is like mikesreallycoolblog.blogspot.com, in fact, that is not a URL that you own and control, because I cannot redirect that URL to anyone else because it is a Blogspot URL. Blogspot owns that URL because it says .blogspot.com at the end. Same thing with .typepad.com URLs. What you really want for your own blog, because again, we're going to be doing a blog for SEO, and we want to have more and more people linking to that blog, and we want to control the power of those links, we want to control all of that. If you're on a TypePad or a Blogger URL, then you're helping Blogger and TypePad build up their own SEO if people link to your blog article. You know, I mean, if you want to do that out of the goodness of your heart, that's fine, but it's not going to help you and your business so much. So what you really want to do is have something like blog.hubspot.com, or even if you have, you know, the HubSpotBlogs.com or something like that, but some other URL that you own and control, and you want to have all the links going into that URL. So that's the one thing I'll say about blogging. The second thing I'll say is that for all of you that have questions about blogging, our next webinar will actually be about business blogging. It'll be about business blogging tips, how to set one up, all of that kind of stuff. And when you guys get in the next 24 hours an email with the video of this webinar and a link to download the slides, we're going to include, hopefully, a link to register for that webinar. So just register for that webinar, and then you can hear me talk about blogging for a whole bunch of more time as well. All right, let me see if I can scan through here. I'm starting to lose my voice, so I don't know how many I'm going to be able to sort of take here. Let's see. All right, so one quick question from Sherry and also Louie. It's sort of a similar question. How do you define a lead, and does a lead equal click-through rate? No. So I actually define a lead as someone that fills out a form on my website and get their contact information. So a click-through to me is really a visitor. And a lead is really someone who fills out a form on my website, something that my salespeople can actually follow up with. And so to me, it's just very, very clear. You know, someone who visits your website, that's a click-through or a visitor. And someone who fills out a form where I have contact information, I can actually call them back and follow up with them. That's a great way to sort of think about what a lead is and what a visitor is. All right, a question from Andrew, which is, how do you get Google to crawl your site more often? The best way to get Google to crawl your site more often is to get more links so that you're more important in Google's mind, and also publish content more frequently. On the HubSpot blog, I know that we publish content a few times a week, and at this point in time, I can actually track that Google is seeing my new content within an hour of when I publish a new blog article, because I publish relatively frequently. On other websites that I've worked with, if you haven't published new content in 30 or 60 days, Google may only come once a month. So if you just publish new content on a relatively frequent basis, Google's going to figure that out, and they're going to start coming back to your website more often. What else? All right. A question from Colleen. Does Google punish you for getting links too fast? No, not really. I haven't seen any cases like that. I'm not going to say that Google might not be suspicious of that, but certainly they're definitely not going to punish you for it. So get as many links as fast as you possibly can, and from as many good websites and reputable websites as you can, and that's definitely going to be something that's helpful. All right, so Annika is asking, what's the difference between inbound link and backlink? Great question. I actually, Annika, don't like the word backlink because I hear people actually use it to mean different things. So it means sometimes a link from your website back someplace else, and sometimes a link from another website back to you. And sometimes it even means more like a reciprocal link of you link to someone and they link back to you. So I actually don't like that term at all. I use the word inbound links, but really what you want to think about in terms of SEO is how many people are linking into your website. And that's really sort of one of the most important things, is just the number of links into your website and the nature of those links. So that's really what you want to think about in terms of SEO. And I know sometimes my language is a little different, but I'd like to use very specific words because I like to be clear about a lot of these things. All right. I'm trying to think of what else here. We have a lot of questions still. I just don't think I'm going to be able to go through the rest of them. So what we're going to try to do is, again, we're going to publish the recording of this webinar, assuming I pressed all the right buttons, and then we're also going to distribute the slides as well. So you'll all get, hopefully, an email with a link to that within 24 hours. And if you have any other questions or things like that, or you want to talk more about HubSpot and how we can help you, really sort of do a lot with SEO and get a lot more leads and to help you with inbound marketing, you can email me or give us a call as well on that 800 number, and I'd be happy to talk to any of you. So thanks a lot for joining. I hope you all enjoyed the SEO 101 webinar. And remember, you'll get a link to the next one, which is about blogging and business blogging. And feel free to tell your friends and invite your friends. We're hoping to set a new record for attendance for that one as well. So thanks a lot, and hope everyone has a great day.